Ted Richards, welcome to the Dyl Friends podcast. My friend, it's an absolute pleasure and honour to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Dyl.
Mate, as I said off air before we were chatting, this is actually, it's a small world, so you're doing a lot well at the moment. You've been nominated for your podcast, the Richards Report, for the Best Business Podcast of 2020. So firstly, congratulations.
Thanks very much, Dyl. Congratulations to you too on your nomination. I believe this is your first nomination.
It is.
Yeah, it's not my first.
You're a two-timer.
A two-time. So going back to back, which says something about the quality, maybe.
So did you win last year?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So it's just two-time nominations.
Yeah.
We'll get into your podcast in a bit because I do love your podcast. But firstly, at the start of the show, I like to sort of set the scene of how we know each other. But from my memories, this is probably our first time chatting, really, and it's an honour. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time.
Thanks, Dyl. I didn't think you'd remember this, but something actually happened on field where we crossed paths. And we shouldn't cross paths on field. We don't play a similar position.
Well, we don't really play similar levels either.
Yeah.
You were quite a good player.
No.
You were playing a lot of AFL football.
Well, let's go back to you were playing for Carlton at the time. I was playing on Jared Waite, and it was a game at the SCG, and the game was done. We were up by...
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, we're up by like 7 or 8 goals, 5 minutes to go. I'm going through the motions, and there was no one around or anything like that. And anyway, I just got winded out of nothing. Like, nowhere. This hand came from nowhere, just a little cheap little jab into my soft guts that weren't expecting it. And I'm down on all four. And this little weed is just kind of jogging off. And I'm like, who's that? And I was like, fucking Dylan Buckley. Got me. And Dyl, you just pissed me off there for a couple of weeks going, fucking Dylan Buckley got me. But what I do want to say is, like, what we play is a contact sport. It's a team sport. You do what you can to help your teammates, and
even when you're 70 points down in the last 5 minutes.
But these attributes, you actually enjoy playing with these players. That you had Paps on last week.
Yes,
I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Paps doesn't do that to the people that go and chase Buddy each week. And,
the difference between me and Paps was he then kicks 4 goals. Okay, I would just run around punching people in the ribs and not do much else. So if you're doing that, you've got to back yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm also conscious it's probably not the right environment anymore, but I owe you one.
You too. Yeah. That's incredible. Honestly, that's gone up there. There's not many career highlights, but me hitting you in the ribs and you remembering it is up there with something that I've been really blessed with. So thank you.
No worries.
Thanks for bringing it up. Thanks for being honest. Mate, as we touched on your podcast, been nominated Best Business Podcast 2-time. You've mentioned that. It's great. Hopefully you take that out. I know you will. I'm a massive fan of it, to be honest.
Thanks.
And we got in contact a couple of weeks ago for the second time.
Yep.
And after that rough start.
Yep.
But I listened to a couple of episodes, and one is one of my favourite episodes, honestly, with Nick Stone.
Yeah.
So Nick Stone's one of your mates from school, footy areas, and he's the founder and creator of Bluestone Lane, which is a cafe in New York.
Yep.
And you will tell this story a lot better than me, but from my memory of this podcast that I loved, and for anyone who's been to New York will know Bluestone Lane because they do the $1 lattes early days. They've brought, coffee, Melbourne coffee to the US, and it's just a sensation. And I want you to clarify this because I've definitely ruined it already, but there was an incredible point in this podcast where right place, right time, I suppose, marketing wise, but they were doing the $1 lattes in New York when they don't drink that sort of coffee over there. And it was next door to the Victoria's Secret models? Yeah. Or did he plan it to be next to them? Or I've ruined it. You might take over and tell it a lot better.
Well, it's Nick's story to tell, but I will fact check it a couple of areas along the way where you've kind of gone 0 to 100.
Okay.
It started off as a little bit of a side hustle and just trying to get people drinking these flat whites, which is a bit foreign to the US. But he's not confined to New York. I think his empire's in the vicinity of 60 or so US and Canada, all around North America.
Wow.
One of them is in, I believe in Soho, not far from where the Victoria's Secret models are often shot for shoots and things like that. And I think that was just purely luck.
Wow.
Yeah, and we all need a bit of luck in life, and to have Victoria's Secret models walking around Soho holding your cup and your brand, is there any better advertising than that? Yeah, so I can provide an intro, but in the meantime, if you're interested, go and check out that story.
Yeah, please do. We'll have that link to Ted's podcast and that episode in the show notes for anyone who wants to check it out, because it is great. Serious unit. He was a 3-time delistee, so respect.
Yeah. Saints, Pies, and Hawks.
Good things. Delistings, blessings, I reckon, sometimes.
What an optimistic way of looking at that, yeah.
Positivity has always been a strength. And also positivity when you're 70 points down.
Yeah.
To just, you never know. If there's a rib there, take it.
You never know when it'll turn into a good podcast story.
Podcasting your journey, I suppose. We'll just finish on that section there. How did this come about for Six Pack, obviously your business, which we will get into later, but the podcasting side, because you've grabbed some awesome people.
Thanks. When I retired from footy in 2016, I had a bit of time off, and we just had our son was born, and I'd just take him for walks around Centennial Park in Sydney, and I fell in love with podcasts back then.
What were you listening to?
Well, all I'd listened to was investing podcasts. So I'm incredibly passionate about it, and they were pretty much all American.
Yep.
And I was like, this is great, but there wasn't back then, over 4 years ago, anyone in Australia doing this. So it kind of planted a seed for me. And then when I joined Six Park, within our office space, tucked away in this corner, is this recording studio that no one was using. And I was like, I'm going to give this a go, and I'm going to talk to people about investing. It's not me that's going to sit here and tell people what they should do. It's going to be me asking experts, people that have succeeded in their industries, the questions that they may otherwise be embarrassed to ask, or learn some life skills along the way, draw out lessons. And it's not always going to be about stocks. It's not always going to be about people that have. It's going to be unique stories in different fields, and that's how it came about. And unlike you, Dyl, it's incredible you punching out an episode a week, because it's actually a bit of effort goes into it. I do one episode a month, and that takes up enough of my time, but I love it. I absolutely love it.
It is. And I think I said this a while back, but selfishly, I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they said, why do you love doing this? And I was like, well, so many reasons, but selfishly, there's a part for me where I'm sitting down with successful people, and successful to me doesn't mean millions of dollars or ups and downs. Successful just means you've had a life story and you're learning from things. So it's like a part of it's actually just learning from other people and their things, and you realise there's no luck in success. It's every step of the way. It's like setbacks, positivity, right place, right time, but also taking opportunities. And that's just a current theme through everyone. Yeah,
it's incredible, the doors that it can open. I sat down with Scott Galloway once in New York for a podcast recording. Scott is a professor of marketing at NYU, and he was the one that brought down the WeWork empire from being a $46 billion valuation into a fraction of that. And I'm sitting down with him for a chat to do a podcast, and all he wants to do is talk about football and Australian football and what's going on back there. And I'm kind of having this like, what the hell's going on here? Yeah. So I do love it. Yeah.
It is. Honestly, it is a special industry, I think. And when you tune into something, it's like you're choosing to listen. So it's actually you're invested in it.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk a bit more about later. But one thing about you, and I know you're a busy man. You got your podcast. You're obviously working with Six Park, and we'll talk about Six Park later and investing and what actually that makes up. Because I'm genuinely just interested about that. Yeah. I have no real knowledge in what that is, and I've got a funny story I want to tell you later.
Yep. Looking forward to it.
More importantly, there's something that I know you're very keen on, and it's bees.
Yes. Yep. You got on your research. Yep.
I do. This desk, as I say, it's a good desk, but a lot of things come across it.
Yeah.
And you're a bee man.
Yep.
I've done some research myself on bees.
Yep.
And I'm not saying, I know that there's a higher level to this. Okay. I know you don't just love bees.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it's that we need bees in the world, and you're sustaining it, or do you just like honey?
No. So once again, this was not something which was kind of like, I planned this. I went and did a course overseas in Boston, and on the campus, they had beehives in the campus. I was like, I've never seen a beehive before. I was just amazed by this, this thing. I was just kind of kept on looking at them. And I said to my wife when I got back, gee, I'd love a beehive one day, something like that. And it must have resonated because that Christmas I got a beehive. And it's like, I'm going to set this up and I'm going to learn. Like, I had no idea, with a birdhouse, like you put a bird there and you put a house in the tree and the bird comes out of nowhere and starts living in it. When you put a beehive together, you got to put bees in it. Like they don't just fly in. So I had to go and research where you go and buy
a bee.
10,000 bees from. Anyway, Dyl, I apologise if you're losing listeners right now.
No.
So I decided I'd call the hive Beaverly Hives 90210.
That's not a thing, is it?
Yeah. Oh, well, it is for me when you write into it. And I just love it. First and foremost, what I love is I got a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old,
yes,
and I got another one on the way. And I love the fact that I'm teaching the kids where food comes from. I really enjoy that. I like the fact that it's natural, and I'm trying to help nature, but it's a flow hive, and what that means is it's got a tap on it. So like when you turn the tap on and the honey starts coming out for the first time, it's a pretty magical experience. So listen, I'm conscious I'm only talking to a small portion of your audience. It's like, how good's that? And the other 99% are like, let me go and listen back to Tom Papley.
Yeah. No, seriously, I love the idea of beehive, and I think as you grow older and I suppose mature in a way, which I'm just defining what that means. I'm trying to get there. My sort of taste in food and knowing where things come from, because of footy, you sort of do whatever they tell you, but then once you're on your own, you research things and you don't have to eat certain things anymore. Like it does make you feel a lot better inside. I can imagine there's a massive satisfaction, like growing a garden. Yeah, look at my plants. You know how good I feel when I see a new leaf out of those? Fantastic.
They're looking good. I've had a crack at kombucha and stuff like that. I call it my John Kombucha after the former Port player. We're drifting.
Yeah, we are.
I do point to the fact that David Beckham's gone out and got a beehive in the last year or two.
Since you have.
Chris Hemsworth. So am I. I do point to my wife when she gives me crap because we now got 2 beehives because one wasn't enough, and probably won't be long before I get a third. But anyway.
Last thing on the beehives, I know for a fact when you got it, you were so excited. Before the bee suit arrived, you were doing this without a bee suit and you got stung multiple times. Yeah. How bad was that?
It was pretty bad.
We've got a photo and it would pop up on screen.
Yeah, I got it pretty, I'm not sure if it was arrogant or just excited.
Confident.
Yeah, just excited. And I was opening up the beehive and doing some work, and I can remember the feeling of when the bees got under my sunglasses. And when I was like, yeah, I'm in trouble. Yeah.
That would hurt.
Yeah, it was, my wife wasn't too happy about that.
Okay. So beehives, tick, suits, tick.
Yep.
All right, mate, let's get into your footy career. Congratulations on a great career, mate, because it is fantastic. And I love your story because it's similar to mine in no ways at all. But just the fact that we both played in Melbourne, then went to Sydney, and I sort of can just bond with you over that sort of thing.
I think you'd be surprised. I think Dyl, I signed a lot of 1-year deals.
Oh, but aren't they the best thing that have happened to you now? You look back.
No, I would have loved to set me.
Okay. So would have I. But I'm saying in hindsight, it taught you good lessons in terms of hustling and.
Yeah, you're right. Like you do draw a lot of satisfaction from doing hard things and
Not at the time though, is it? It's more after that.
Nah.
But let's go there, mate, because Essendon obviously first picked up there, I think in pick 27.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And that was your first few years. How did you find it there, I suppose, and why do you think it didn't work out the way you wanted to in your first few years of AFL?
I think a few reasons. Like I was always a hard worker and everything like that. When I went to Essendon, I was an Essendon fan, and I got drafted there when I was 17, and Essendon had just won the premiership. And to be honest, I think I was like, part of me was just happy to be their mates. Yeah, I was like, I'm hanging around my heroes. And in hindsight, and I don't know if I had the maturity at the time, I should have had the view, I don't care who you are and what you've done. I'm taking your spot, Hurdy, or Lloydie or Scotty Lucas. And but to be honest, I was like, I just want to have a coffee with you. Yeah. So I had 5 years there, and it didn't work out. Sheeds and I got along great, like Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
But when it came to match selection, Thursday night, he just didn't rate me, and I knew that I needed to move on.
So that really remonstrates with me there, and I think a lot of young people, like when you first get to a club, because I was the exact same, I suppose. Carlton, go to my early days, and all I want to do is everyone's friend.
Yep.
And you worry about being liked, not respected.
Oh,
and that's
perfect analogy.
The biggest thing that I learned, and what transition I'm 99% sure for you as well. So you traded in end of 2005 to the Swans.
Yep.
How did that come about? Was that like a trade that was? There's a lot of things with trades, It's like, were you traded? Did you request a trade? Were you thrown into a deal with Essendon? Was it like could it have been a delisting, but they picked you up? Like, not in a rude way. I'm just meaning, how did it work?
So it was about halfway through 2005, I realised I've got to make a move here.
Yeah. Were you contracted with them and you said, I just need to get out?
I was out of contract that year. I was like, I've got to make a move here. It's just not working out. Like, I'm playing for Bendigo Bombers every week. And, so at the end of this season, I met with other teams, and I was 22 at the time, so I was pretty keen to stay in my comfort zone, which meant staying in Melbourne. The Dogs, Blues were pretty keen, but Swans were pretty keen as well. And I can remember, it was the week before the grand final in 2005. It was maybe like the Tuesday or the Wednesday, so we're talking like 4 or 5 days before the grand final. And my managers at the time said, Roosie wants you to come up to Sydney. They want to meet you and introduce you to all the other coaches. And I'm like, they got a grand final in 5 days. And they're like, no, this is important to them. And it just blew my mind that I could be that important to a team. So I went up there just to go through the motions, because I was pretty keen to stay in Melbourne. And I met with them, and it was just a day trip. And I can remember flying home that night going, I want to be a part of this club. Yeah. So when the season finished, I told Essendon, I want to be traded to Sydney. And they're like, oh, no, we'll give you a 1 year deal. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. And they're like, oh, 2 year deal? And I'm like, no, I'm out of here. It hasn't worked. And they're like, all right, we want a first round draft pick. And I'm like, I play for the Bendigo Bombers. What do you mean a first round draft pick? And I couldn't believe it. And Swans, to their credit, even though I was a VFL player, all right, we'll give it to you. And then Essendon, their cheek, goes, and a third round draft pick.
It was just Adora?
Yeah.
This makes complete sense.
You wouldn't believe it. And I think and Swans came to the party, and there was a shuffling of steak knives, in the third or fourth round pick. And I felt so embarrassed that I was some of the players that have gone on second round draft picks, like Ben Brown, I was picking in the 20s or the 30s. So anyway, I went to the Swans, and I got there, and I was incredibly grateful for what they gave up to ensure I could get there.
Yeah, no, it's what was, I suppose, I know you said you with Roosie, you met with all the coaches. What was your first impressions of them? Why was it so impressive? Did they say anything? Was it because as an onlooker and a fan of footy, Swans has always been sort of my favourite team.
Yep.
Not that I barrack for, but you just love the way they seem to go about things. They get guys there, not really yourself because you're a high pick, but you get guys on their second chance sort of thing and resurrect a career. And you hear this thing about the Bloods culture and all these things. What was so impressive about them when you first met there? Was there something that really stood out?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Probably first was in discussions before I went there was Bruce said, we've got a spot for you. We want you to play.
Yeah.
And I'd never had a conversation like that at Essendon. It was always and you could fit on the bench there, and so, and the plan was Mickey O'Deep in the forward line, Barry Hall roaming the 50, me kind of working wing to wing, and Ryan O'Keefe being the real workhorse forward, working right down into the back line, back and forth. So they saw me as solving a problem in the forward line, and I was like,
sweet.
Oh, I'm in. Me, Mickey O, Barry Hall, Ryan O'Keefe, yeah. And so that was one thing that left a mark and impression on me. And the other, which I still remember, is after the trade went through and pre-season had just started, Brett Kirk got me to stand up the front of the group because he wanted to ask me some questions. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever, Kirky. And it was, what does Essendon think of us? Do they think we're soft? And I was like, no, why do you say that? And he goes, well, do they think if they press us hard that they can overcome us? And I had no idea where this was coming from, because the Swans had just won the premiership. And he was so interested in how they were perceived by other teams. And I didn't realise at the time, but if you go back 3 or 4 years from that, the perception that other teams had at the time, which was the foundation of the Bloods, which was the foundation of why they needed to address this, was if you push them, the Swans will give up. They're not resilient. They'll have a crack, but if you just keep at them, they'll give up. And I was like, shit, that conversation was like 3 or 4 years ago. You've since won the premiership and you're still fanatical about this perception. So, and that left a mark, because I knew I'd come to a great club.
Super impressive. And you hear so much about Brett Kirk and his sort of leadership styles. And I know there's, Adam Goods and guys, that, probably a plethora of guys that do that throughout. What made it so special, I suppose? Like, I know you said then, like, it was, what do they think of us? But what was it like internally, I suppose? Like, you hear of these feedback sessions where it was just brutal honesty.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you think made them so good?
Oh, I consider myself very lucky to come into the Sydney at the end of 2005, where a lot of the hard work had been done the years before. Probably most in particular, Stuart Maxfield. And the line I like is, a seed was planted to grow a tree under the shade of which many never sat. Well, I got to sit under that tree for a while. To answer your question, what happens at the club is the club, the players, the leadership group do not shy away from having tough, awkward conversations with individuals or groups of people about how they're perceiving, how they view their performance, their attitude, their mindset, and how they think they can get better. And it's intense because they're your mates, and it's the constant battle about like versus respect, which you touched on earlier. It's not easy, but on the most part, good things come from these conversations.
Does something stand out to you? Did you ever receive anything, or do you remember sort of having to maybe even give feedback to someone that was uncomfortable?
Many times. Yeah. I think the feedback sessions have somewhat dialed down in that it's no longer one person sitting in a chair in the middle and 40.
Because for people listening out there, again, this happens at a lot of clubs, and we spoke about this earlier. So many clubs try and create culture and have these meetings, but it doesn't work everywhere.
Yeah.
You really need buy-in from everyone to have them. So, and how it would work is people do just sit out the front and people just,
Yeah, and there's always a framework in terms of how the feedback's going to be given. It's not just, because you need to ensure that it's
constructive.
Yeah, constructive, and once it's given, you're then using the words "but" afterwards and go, "But yeah, you're still doing that good" and everything like that, and it kind of undoes everything you just said at the beginning. But it also wasn't just something for the young blokes and the developing team. Coaches were given feedback. Leaders, Goodsy was, given feedback. And I always struggled to give the coaches feedback. It's like, gee, I'm out of contract at the end of the year. That mortgage isn't going away. I'm very lucky to be a part of that system.
Scary. Yeah, it is. I can remember, myself having those feedback sessions, especially as a young bloke. You just sort of sit there and go, wow, it's tough. And, the biggest thing you never want to...
Makes you feel sick in your gut sometimes.
You feel sick. It's nearly worse giving it than sometimes receiving it, though. Let's talk about the footy then. I suppose you're 2005, 2006, you get there. They've just won the flag against West Coast, which you look back now, and I actually went to that game. I went to the 05, 06 both games.
Yep.
What's your memories, I suppose, of getting there after they've just won the flag? Then you walk up and, you know, you've done your role there, you're playing in the team, and you go into 06. First grand final you've played in.
Yeah.
What's your memories of that week and, I suppose, the game itself? Because it was a absolutely massive game.
Yeah. We had a bit of a rivalry against West Coast, so which had started before I got there, but we played them in the, I believe it was the qualifying final.
That was it. That was at West Coast, wasn't it?
Yeah, the famous game with Mickey O.
Into the crowd.
Into the crowd.
Yeah.
When we won that, I knew that shit was getting real, like, you know, because we're going to have a home prelim. And so that win was memorable. Prelim final playing Freo at ANZ Stadium up in Sydney. I can remember with about like 5 or 10 minutes to go, I'm playing full back on Aaron's Sandylands. And he turns to me, because we're up by like, I don't know, like 8 goals or something like that in the last quarter, and he turns to me, he goes, you're going to play in a grand final next week. And I was like, shit, I am too. Yeah, are we having this conversation now? Anyway, and then it's game day. I've kind of gone from like busing to Bendigo to play for the Bendigo Bombers. 12 months before, pretty much, to, you know, the big stage. And I think it was kind of a blessing to be in Sydney, because things didn't get kind of real until we came down to Melbourne, and then you kind of realise, oh yeah, like this is real, because in Sydney you can kind of just keep it going about your normal business. So unfortunately we just fell short, but to be part of an incredible experience like that was, I thought, that could be the pinnacle of my career.
Am I wrong to say that game was the one where you got knocked out at the end?
Yeah.
So you don't remember the game at all?
No.
In terms of...
I do remember it.
Because you were on... you don't remember this, but you were on target for a Norm Smith medal.
I think there might be a bit of mayo in that.
No, we don't add mayo. This is straight facts.
It was, like a few minutes to go. And Daniel Chick, we were playing on each other, and he got me with a good tackle in the last quarter. So I was trying to get into our forward line. And I can remember the doctor ran out to me, and he actually said to me, he goes, Ted, you're all right? And I said, leave me alone. If we win this, we're in the grand final. And like back in the day...
It's not funny.
Yeah, I know. And he was like, this is back in the day. Close enough.
Yeah.
So I was a bit confused at the end. Where I was like, we've lost the prelim. Yeah, and I quickly realised, no, it's the granny. So, not great.
It's pretty crazy, man. And I suppose, you end up getting one later on, which we'll go on. But bloody hell, that is scary. And I suppose it's a very different game now in terms of that stuff. After that, you're playing some good footy, still staying up in Sydney, get really consistent. But we were chatting before earlier, like I reckon 2009 to 2010, that was probably like a crossroads for you.
Yeah.
On field, off field, you were sort of working out what was happening.
Yeah, so I think I signed a 2-year deal in 2009, and I didn't have a very good year in 2009. I actually ended up getting injured. Fev got me. And my older brother was studying over in Sweden, doing a course over there. And I can remember thinking, gee, if footy doesn't work out for me next year, I'm going to move to Sweden. And
for work?
To do some study over there. And so it would be over in Stockholm. And what happened was 2010 didn't start off that well, and I got dropped. And I can remember looking at the fixture, and we had like the 3 or 4 bottom teams coming up, and I was like, oh shit, it is going to be that hard to get back into this team. And what ended up happening is I had about 8 weeks. I was dropped, and like I'm busing to Canberra to play in the NEFL.
Been there.
Yes. And I'm out of contract this year, and I was like, shit, I need to put some things in place to get ready for the next stage of life, because I'm thinking that I'm going to get tapped on the shoulder at the end of the year saying, thank you for your time, Ted, but service is no longer required, delisted. And So I was like, all right, I'm moving to Sweden at the end of the year. What am I going to do for money? And I was like, I'm going to be, like, whilst I'm studying, I was like, I'm going to be a personal trainer because, so I was like, I'll start doing a personal training course so I can kind of like get a job over there, because turns out Australian footballers aren't really relative to anything over there. And so this is all, I had this plan for like what was going to happen at the end of the year. But at the same time, I was like, I'm still all in with football. Mm. I've got, let's call it 8 weeks to go in the season. And if I don't get another chance, I'm moving to Sweden. But if I can, like, keep going with footy, because I was probably like 27, 28 at the time. And I still quite like, and so I was all in on footy, playing in the NEFL. And as I mentioned earlier, we all need a bit of luck in life. Craig Bolton, who was the centre half back for the Swans at the time, he got injured, which meant with like round 18, I'm back in the team. And I did well enough at the end of that season where the Swans offered me another 1-year deal. And I don't know if you remember that episode of The Simpsons when someone's like just about to offer Homer a deal, and before they've even said it, he's gone, done. Yeah. That's where I was at with the 1-year deal. Like, I don't even think they needed to say a figure.
You didn't negotiate? You didn't ask for?
I'm pretty sure I still had a manager, but he would have been like,
take it.
Just take it. Yeah. So I got another chance, and at the end of the season, like, I was always a hard worker. I was always committed to football. But I was like, I've got to change the strategy here a bit, because I've got another chance. Who knows if this is a 1-year deal and I'm done again, or I can turn this into something more. So I did a bit of reflecting at the end of the season, and for some reason, I don't mind reading, and I read kind of quite widely. I read this book, Good to Great by Jim Collins, and it just resonated for me. It resonated for me in 2 ways, and there were 2 themes within this book that I was like, I'm taking these ideas. One of which was this Greek parable that's mentioned throughout this book, this kind of analogy between the hedgehog and the fox. In the parable, the fox is good at many things, the hedgehog is good at one. And when I looked back at my footy career, I was trying to be good at everything. I was trying to play as many positions as I could to get a game. It made sense to me. I thought, if I could be a winger, I could be, get me on the bench and I can do all these things. I was like, no more of that. I'm going to be the hedgehog. I'm going to be bloody good at one thing. And the other nugget that resonated for me in the book is this concept of the big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG. And I decided my BHAG was going to be, I'm going to be the best defender in the competition. And I wrote that down, and I'm like, I'm going to own this. And it came hard because I was bloody playing Canberra, NEFL. And here I am telling myself I'm the best defender in the competition. So I was like, I got to get a plan for how I'm gonna make this happen. I was like, I compared myself to the best defenders in the competition, like Darren Glass, Scarlett, Rutten, all these guys. And I'm like, they're bigger than me. And so I was like, as you know, Dyl, off-season program. What's the thing with the off-season program? Well, you got to come back and run a PB.
Yeah.
At the Swans, we had this bloody 3K time trial every year. And it was like, it's the most irrelevant test for a footballer ever. I used to say to
When
Horse,
do you ever run 3 kilometres straight on a field?
I said, Horse, you're telling me to learn geography for a maths test.
Yeah.
I chased Nick Rewalt from wing to wing doing repeat 150s. I'm never going like just one pace for like, anyway. So I was like, stuff the 3K test. Just put muscle on and just be a monster in one-on-ones. So that was one thing. The other thing that I recognised, I just got to believe in myself more. I got to believe in myself more, and it's so easy to say and stop it there. How am I going to do this? And I was like, I'm just going to embrace visualisation. So I wrote down every Wednesday before the game, I'm going to go and sit in that chair in the park at Centennial Park, and I'm going to play the game. So I'd go to this chair in Centennial Park, and I'd sit there, and it'd take me about 40 minutes, and I'd actually find it quite stressful because I would visualise everything. I'd visualise the window down in the car, what I'm listening to in the music, getting strapped with the tape. I'm visualising my opponents, sometimes getting off to a good start and everything like that. But I would visualise myself dominating my opponent, just dominating them. Like high balls coming in, Nick Rewalt, bang, you're out of the way. I'm taking this. And I'm not saying that's how it played out, but when it came to game day, I was like, I got this.
Yeah.
I've seen this. I've seen this movie before. I'm ready to go. So started 2011 and I'm like, we've got the plan. Let's go with it. And kept it going. And Dyl, I'm proud to say I came fifth in the Swans Best and Fairest that year. And I was like, oh, fuck, like from where I've come from. And I was like, we're going again. We're going again. Absolute discipline to this strategy. Nothing wavers. Fucking hedgehog, BHAG. We're going again. And footy went to another level. 2012 at the end of the year. All Australian, second in the Best and Fairest premiership. And I kept that mindset the whole time for the rest. I think I ended up playing for after 2010, another 6 years. So, and I thought I was done. That's my plan on how I kind of got through it and draw a lot of satisfaction from that.
Mate, you should. It's honestly, it's a credit to yourself because the visualization stuff is very tough.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do, I tried that a lot and I think that really resonated with me in terms of the hedgehog versus the fox. I was a fox as well. I was like, I can play half forward, I can play half back, I can play wing, I'm really good at bench, pick me. I'll just play anywhere. It's like, no, if you just fucking nail down one thing you're good at, commit to it.
Yeah.
And the visualization one I love because we did a little bit on that as well. And I love the part where you say it's not actually visualizing just the good things.
Nah.
It's visualizing the bad things, then still being positive to then kick through with them.
Yeah, I'd visualize, a fumble or some form of stuff up, and I wouldn't, just dwell on it. I was like, back on, next contest. Here I am, go again. And it was great for me because it just set me up for that week.
That's huge, man. And going into the 2012 Granny, you're playing on Buddy Franklin there.
Yeah.
He was playing at the Hawks at that stage. What were you visualising in that game?
I struggled going into that because I'd had a real issue. I'd injured myself the week before and I was paranoid, absolutely paranoid that I couldn't run. I couldn't change direction because I couldn't even train that week.
Was it in your knee? Or
no, it's syndesmosis.
Syndesmosis.
Yep. Done a lot of damage to that. And the physio was like, the team at the time were like, listen, we can strap this up, we can lock it up and we can just jab it pre-game and every quarter and we can get you through this game. And it was a few years before, I think Trent Crode went down with an injury in the first few minutes of the game. So fortunately, Hawks went on to win that game. But I can remember thinking, if I go down the first few minutes because I just cannot change direction on one of the most athletically gifted players of all time that I'm playing on, I'm a liability, and it is incredibly selfish for me to kind of go into this game if I'm going to hold the team back. So I was kind of nervous going, what do I do here?
Did you ever consider not playing?
Well, I think I did spoke about it, and the physio's like, we can get you through this game. We can get you through this game. You'll never kind of go to a huddle at quarter time, half time, 3/4 time. You just go down, and we'll jab it up, and when you're back out there. And that was the plan. And to be fair, Buddy played really well. I did my best to to nullify him, but got through that game. And I'm incredibly proud that I contributed on the day.
I've got two questions with that. One's a statement. Zach Dawson, I had him on the podcast a while ago and he spoke about a similar issue. He got food poisoning the night before the 2010 grand final.
Yeah.
So he was in hospital the whole night on a drip and the same thing going through his head. He's like, well, if I go out there, am I going to be a liability? And Ross Lyon came up to him before, didn't say one word, just came up to him before the game and said, you better not fuck this up. You could lose a lot of friendships from this. And that was just before he went out. But he said it was nearly the best thing that happened because after that he knew, he's like, I've got to get through this game.
Yeah.
And nearly you put more pressure on that. You're probably thinking about the injury more than the actual game, so you're probably not even stressing about it. Secondly, with the visualization stuff, did you visualize healing?
I don't think I was that good. No, I don't think I went that far. But I can remember like going, I'm going to do what I can here.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to try and think that I'm going to be like the best. I'll focus it on my role and I'll play my role and I'll do it to the best of my ability.
Mate, grand finals, I love grand finals, as every footy lover does. In grand finals, I suppose there's always those moments in a game, those defining moments, I suppose, and it can be different for players in each thing. And it's often something that we don't see as a public eye. It's something that probably happens off the ball or internally something was needed to be done. Does something stick out to you in that game where you remember, fuck, that was huge. That moment was massive.
Dan Hanbury did a great act. I believe it was the first quarter where he kind of ran back with the fight a bit and Roughhead got him pretty solid, but Hannah's didn't shirk the contest. And I can remember going, we are in here. Like it's only little things, but I can remember like, here is this young kid giving everything he's got, and you just want to support it and play your role too. To answer your question, that'd be one.
That was a huge mark, wasn't it? Back with the flight, cleaned up.
Yep, and got back up. Massive. On with the show.
Quickly, just on footy as well, I think this would be interesting. You're talking about playing on these big guys. Who were some of your toughest opponents?
It's normally the forward that's playing. It's got in a good team that's got a great midfield. So let's look at Nick Rewalt and his career. Nick, I don't know, probably played for 17 or 18 years or something, but for portions of that career, Nick had a phenomenal team around him and was just getting it down. And for other portions of Nick's career, let's say the midfield wasn't too great, especially towards the end when Saints were more down the bottom of the ladder. And it was very different playing on Nick because he just wasn't getting the same supply. So he's always hard to play on because he's so fit and everything like that. But you got a Nick Rewalt when the Saints are at the top, a Roughhead when the Hawks are at the top, Jonathan Brown in the peak of the Lions dynasty. They're bloody hard to play on because if you're lucky enough to beat them once, well, guess what? It's coming back down there in 10 seconds' time. So go again. And it's just a matter of time before they're going to get you. Yeah, so it's those guys that are hard to stop.
Footy moments, as we touched on earlier, in 2009 through that period where you got the really bad injury with Fev. So Fev punctured your lung.
Yeah.
He ran through you.
I went back and tried to take...
You went back with the flight?
And he got me with his knee, 7 breaks of the rib. And when they broke, they punctured my lung and had to go to hospital. And the lung is like a bag, and when there's no air in it, it actually shrinks. And, with the blood that's going into the lung, it's kind of getting less and less, and you now start working off one lung. And so it's quite dangerous because your heart's got to pump, double the pace to get the blood around your body. So they took me into hospital, and they had to cut through my ribs to put like a little vacuum cleaner kind of thing, like a tube down there to get the blood out so my lung could expand again. And it was bloody painful. And it was like the next day or two, they've come to me and gone, Ted, we put the tube in the wrong spot. We've got to do it again. And I was like, what?
Do you have to be awake while they're doing this?
Yeah, you've got to be awake while you're doing it. So you just got to hold your arm up, and like they cut through your ribs and put this little pipe in. And I can remember like when they go, listen, we've got to do it again. I was just livid. I was like, so painful. And they're going, and is it all right if a student does it?
No.
And I was like, mate, I had like, someone's been doing this for 30 years, stuffed that up last time. And they're going, listen, I'll bring them in just so you can meet them and they'll have a chat with you about what they're going to do. And in walks the most attractive German surgeon. She was stunning. And I was like, yeah, we've all got our ego. I've got, yep, here you go. They've gone, listen, last time we gave you morphine and it wasn't strong enough because of what we have to do. So this time we're going to give you ketamine. And I'm not
a horse, are you?
I'm not a horse, and I'm not here to preach about about drugs or anything like that. But it was an incredible experience. And which, I won't go into more detail there, but I can remember at one stage just before
enjoyable.
Just before the operation started, for some reason I thought we were in a spaceship and we were blasting off, and I can remember turning to her going, "Are we really going to do this while we're blasting off? Like, let's just wait until we at least level out." And anyway, I had to have like a week in hospital because the issues with the lung and everything like that, and they put me up in public. And I can remember I was filthy because I was like, you pay so much money on private health insurance, and I'm in this public hospital. So I had this bloke next to me who I became quite good mates with. And we had to share a TV. So we're watching like Channel 10 News or something like that. And he starts getting all excited because he's on the news. And I was like, what happened? He goes, "Oh, I got stabbed. And like, this is the party I was at." And I was like, "Oh." And anyway, yeah. Anyway, so my sister comes round, who wasn't living too far, to drop off a piece of cake or something like that I just needed for a little emotional support or something like that. And just before she got there, he asked if he could borrow my phone for a second. I'm like, yeah, no worries, mate. Here's my phone. And I was chatting with my sister for like an hour or two, and I can remember like, "Mate, where's my phone?" I was like, pulled the curtain back. I went, "Mate, give me my phone back. Like, he's still on the phone." So I got the phone back, and I could hear I pulled the curtain back because I was filthy with him. I had a look at the phone number, and he'd been making these international calls, and I'm like, "Oh my God, come on, mate!" Like, he starts. I could hear him crying. I could hear him crying on the other side of the curtain, and I'm like, "You're shitting me because you've obviously been calling people overseas on my phone. I'm trying to do something nice."
It's probably the days as well when it wasn't as cheap.
Yeah. And I got a bloody vacuum cleaner plugged into my rib, and my lung. And so I pull the curtain back and I go, "All right, what is it? What's the matter?" And he's like, "I just found out that the bloke that stabbed me is going to come back and get me." And I'm like, "Oh shit, I don't need this right now." So I can remember I grabbed a fork and I just tucked it in my bed. Just thinking, if things escalate here.
I'm going to fork this shit out of this
Yeah,
fire.
yeah. And I rang up security and I said, "Listen, we've got an issue here. This bloke who's been stabbed a few days ago has just been told the bloke's coming back to get him." And he goes, "Don't worry, I've got it. I'm coming down." So he was on level 10 and we're on level 4 or something like this. In walks a bloke who, he looked like he was 90. He was like, I've gone, "All right, what's the plan?" He goes, "If they come in, you let me know and I'll sort it out." And I'm like, "You're on level 10, we're on level 4. If a bloke's coming in to get stabbed and this 90-year-old is walking in, anyway, so long story short, they had to get someone else in. They shipped him off into another room, and I had to tell the bloke that came in to, they replaced him. I worded him up. I said, "Listen, there's an odd
Mistaken identity.
There's an odd chance someone might come in here, just start trying to stab people."
Just make sure you make him aware it's not you.
Yeah. So I think we drifted from.
I like this story.
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole there, but that's when.
Do you know how's he going? Are you keeping in contact today?
Nah, we
Fell
lost
out of touch.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I hope he's safe.
I hope so too.
That is scary. But in all seriousness, I don't want to discourage that injury because that could have been pretty bad.
Yeah, I think so. You're very lucky if when injuries happen in professional football and AFL, and that you kind of immediately got all these doctors and stuff around you. But it's coughing up blood, and I think back in the day, there's only so long that your heart can kind of just keep going, beating harder and harder and harder to kind of get blood around one lung for. Yeah.
Hectic. As all footballers would say, it's part of the parcel, but that's pretty serious, obviously. Another one, I suppose, that you've been touched by, and I was reading up on this before, is a time when later in your career as well, you've had another head knock.
Yep.
And it was a bad concussion. What's your history with concussion?
The unfortunate issue with a concussion, say, compared to breaking a bone is, you can get an X-ray when you break a bone in your arm or whatever, and they can say, yeah, you got a broken bone there, let's fix that. With concussion, it's just a bit more unknown. So Fortunately, like, you know, unlike other players that have had some concussions that have had lingering effects, I'm fine. But there's never. I wouldn't imagine there's ever something like a good concussion or anything like that.
It is a scary thing, and I suppose even in my point of view, like I had a concussion one day, and towards it, like, it was my last year of footy, and it was one of those ones where it was like a delayed concussion.
Oh yeah,
and I was totally fine, but then like 2 days later, I was, and it wasn't ketamine, but I was feeling like I was behind.
Yep.
It's like, fuck, this is scary. It's
Yep.
a really scary thing. And I think it does deserve more. And I know now it's getting a lot of people looking at it, and how we touched on earlier how, like, you know, when you got concussed early days, but now you look at these
Yep.
times and how
we need to be
important it is.
cautious with it.
Yeah, it's spot on. Mate, let's talk about the transition out of footy and your time, I suppose, through your career. You said you studied for 15 years.
I took one semester off over that 15 years. And
so pretty much every year you played, besides that you studied.
Yep.
What did that do for you mentally? Do you think it helped?
Yeah,
Obviously.
I think it's quite across the industry, this kind of this fear of failure, and people just kind of always think that they're kind of one game or 1 year away from getting cut. So for me, I never felt like I was going to be someone that had a long career, but I always just wanted to have things in place as best I could if I did get cut, that I could get on with the next chapter of my life. So I did a Bachelor of Commerce, and I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend I'm like some model student. Like, I failed subjects. I even met with the Unsatisfactory Progress Committee, but yeah, I chipped away at it. Like, I found it hard. I had to sacrifice, but I got there. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I think this kind of works pretty well with footy and studying. So I did a master's in applied finance, and I ended up working part-time the last 6 years of my footy career.
Is that in the field that you're in now? Obviously, you've got you're owning your own business now, an owner at Six Park.
Yep.
Talk us through a little bit about that, because we were chatting about this earlier. It's something that I'm very unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
And it's almost daunting for me as a young man talking about investing.
Yeah, I worked under a fund manager studying stocks the last 6 years of my footy career, and was going to go down that path after football. And I had a mutual friend that set us up for a coffee just to have a chat about what's been going on. He was telling me about what he's building to provide advice, investment management online that is low cost. And there was Six Park, and it just resonated for me in so many ways, because it is the advice, the management, and this human overlay where he's building out this incredible team, which is chaired up by his co-founder Brian Watson, that sat on the board of guardians for the Australian Future Fund, and also chaired up JP Morgan. Lindsay Tanner, the former finance minister that listeners may be aware of, is a former chairman of Essendon, and Mark Nicholson, who now sits on the investment committee too, who headed up an investment division of the World Bank. And I was like, there is a need for this in Australia, because so much of the industry is just ugly conflicts and lack of transparency. And what we saw happen in the Royal Commission was the clean out we needed. We need, there is a real need in Australia for advice for people that need help with their investments, that has no conflicts, fully transparent, and is low fee, and that is exactly what we do. Yeah,
it's fantastic. For someone that doesn't know anything about this process or how it would take place, i.e. me,
yeah,
what happens? So I'm a young man.
Yep.
I've got money. How little do I need to invest? Because I'll tell you my investing story, and this is why I'm so scared.
Yep.
And it's funny, but it's also shit, because
Yep.
as any young man does, you've got mates at work in this space,
Yep.
and everyone wants to buy stocks at some stage, and you think you obviously got your blue chip stocks that are just safe and they sort of go up, which I'm assuming is something. Not always. Okay. Then you've got these other ones where it's this resource in Latin America they found an oil mine which I came across, and someone said, mate, get onto this. You've got to get onto this. And I said, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I will get onto this. I think it was 0.03 cents or something.
Yeah, there's a lot to speak to there. Australians are fanatical about two things, stocks and property. But there are so many other asset classes beyond that. So what Six Park does is we don't assume that everyone is a cookie cutter person to everyone else. We all have our own risk profile. And we all need to sleep at night. So stocks, they come with risk. They are a high risk, volatile asset class. And if you have an investment horizon that is in the next few years, if you're not someone that is comfortable with a lot of risk, if you have someone that doesn't have much investment experience, you should not be put in a portfolio that is 100% stocks, because you are not going to sleep at night and it won't last.
So then for me, for someone, listening to this podcast now, okay, we're going to start this. I'm just looking at your website here. You can start from upward of $5,000, right?
Yeah.
So I've got $5,000.
You've got $5,000. You'll do the risk assessment online, sixpark.com.au, and we'll ask you questions about your investment horizon, your appetite for risk, your investment experience, etc. And we'll put a recommendation together according to that. It might include stocks, but it'll also include other asset classes too, like international stocks and bonds and property and things like that. Put that portfolio together according to your risk profile, and then invest according to that. So we'll execute the trades for you, manage the portfolio for you, and for that we'll charge you $9.90 a month.
Got that here. It's fantastic. I honestly, I'm not just saying this, and this isn't a plug at all, but it is. I would be looking at this, and we'll be talking about this off air. So I might just need 4,000. I'll go. You if you can spot me 4, I'll put in 1,000. That'd be nice.
That's an incredible return. Yeah. I wish that's the way it worked.
Me too. In all seriousness though, how did this start for you? I suppose this is some really stupid questions, but because I'm not from a business background, and I'm assuming some other people aren't, I'm hoping they're not, and they aren't the only ones that don't get it. How does that work in terms for you, your role now in the business? You're obviously an owner in this.
Yep. So it all started for me, kind of hearing, when I joined the business, I was the 4th member of the team to join, and that was about 4 years ago. There's now about 12 of us. The business has grown in many, many different ways, and it's all off the back of the unfortunate nature of the industry in Australia, where due to the costs of compliance and everything like it, a lot of professionals won't speak to people that have less than $200,000. Yeah. They're not attractive economical clients for a lot of these. So the majority of Australians, 8 out of 10 Australians, don't receive any financial help. And we want to provide a solution for that.
It's incredible. No, absolutely love it. Ted Richards, what's next for you?
Well, my wife's 7 months pregnant with our third child. So Christmas.
3 kids.
Yeah,
3. 2 beehives.
2 beehives.
And 6 Park podcasts.
Yeah. Work, podcast. So, yeah, I guess we never know what life's going to look like after we retire. And it's hard to forecast 5 or 10 years ahead, let alone what the next few months might look like. And if there's anything 2020's taught us, it's be careful making assumptions about the future. But I'm very lucky where I am in life. I've made a lot of sacrifices to be able to to have the job and things like that. But right now, outside of work and family, I love running, listening to podcasts. I live in Melbourne now. If you asked me that a few years ago, I probably thought I would have stayed in Melbourne. But it's funny how life can kind of can turn the way that it does.
It sure is, Matt. And it's very exciting to think what's next. I can't be happier and more blessed to have you on the show. I've honestly learned a lot today, in all seriousness, about a lot of things, because you're an incredibly intelligent man.
Oh, thanks.
Not just off the field, but even just the on-field stuff, mate. The visualization and things. For everyone that listens, I always say this: these things aren't footy things, are they? Like, how much is that mindset you've done now and all those things that you went through, that's helped you so much in your business. Like that, you probably wouldn't be where you are now if you didn't do those things.
Yeah, I reckon people that talk about, footy, you learn how to kick a ball and you learn about it. Footy teaches you life skills that are applicable to other industries. From football, the life skills that it's taught me is hard work and attention to detail, first and foremost, the values that you can get from that. It's also taught me about resilience and being able to handle setbacks with a mindset of how can I grow out of this. And it's also taught me other things too. So I know that like football's unique in that it doesn't traditionally set you up for many other jobs unless you want to stay in the industry, but there are certainly life skills you can draw out of it.
Thank you so much for your time. Good luck this weekend with the awards.
Good luck with the podcast awards for you too.
Thank you. And there's going to be the links in the show notes for Six Park, for the podcast as well. Make sure you check it out because it is incredible. And hopefully we can have a few beers in the future.
Yeah, sounds good.